Well, welcome to Harmony at Home live on this Monday conversation. We're talking about Monday Mission, and we are quite honestly experimenting with some different things as we are gathering here today, because we want to continue to make some things better and help you to have a great experience as we are gathering and watching, serving in different ways than what we've previously done. And today on some of the Monday Mission conversation, we want to talk about a recent mission trip that we took to Guatemala, and then we want to draw some parallels to some things that maybe are taking place all across the world, definitely in our country and in our community right now that we can be involved in. I want to encourage you, as always, when we take some of these steps and opportunities, if you would be so gracious as to interact with us. We would love for you to send in prayer requests, anything that you might have going on. We would love to be able to pray with you and for you about some of those things that are taking place and the opportunities that are really before us during this time, because everything is an opportunity. I know right now we're talking about the coronavirus crisis, and I know that we're getting bombarded with news media and different things that really is pointing to the fact that we're in a crisis, and we are in a crisis. But a crisis is really an opportunity dressed in work clothes, right? That's really what it is. And we want to talk about some of the opportunities that are before us. AJ Runkles, our student ministries pastor, Next Gen pastor, is going to join in here, and we're going to just kind of share some conversation at this moment. AJ, we just went to Guatemala not long ago, last week of February. When we came back, there was a little bit of conversation about the coronavirus and things taking place, but it obviously has drastically changed from that point to this point. Let's talk about a couple of the things that we did in Guatemala and some of the needs of the people that are there, and then we'll talk about some things that we can do right here, because as we're in Monday Mission conversation, we're obviously talking about not just the Great Commission on a global scale, but we're talking about it globally and locally. So let's talk about what we did in Guatemala and some of the things that were there.
Yeah, so I think that right now is a perfect time to tie in both of those things, because obviously, as we went to Guatemala, one of our purposes was to go and bring clean water, to bring food and those types of things. So as we went to Guatemala, you're seeing a lot of people that are without food, right? Like that's what we saw every time we went. Even if we were in the trucks going through the towns, you're seeing people that are carrying small bags of food or fruits or something like that on their head to provide for their families. And so there was definitely a need. And what I think is interesting is that when we were going there, there was not even a thought in our mind that when we came back shortly after, within a month, there would be need for food on American soil. Now, I know we have that throughout all of the United States just through on the normal days, but there would be such a lack of that or a need for that in the coming month as we went on that trip. Never would have thought of it. In fact, as we went and we were able to help out with VBS and those things, and you're seeing children that the food bags were able to feed. Those ones were, it was an amazing sight. It was amazing to see what we could do, but it's crazy how that transition has happened. And now, right, we're here and there's people in our own community that have that same need. There's people that weren't able to get food because of hoarding or whatever. They weren't able to get the food that they need. And as the church helped out with the food pantry the other week and just the things that people are doing, if we're going to be talking about living on mission Monday or any other day, then we have to talk about, if we're going to meet that need for those people in Guatemala, how do we fill and meet that need here in Avon?
Well, absolutely. That's one of the things we need to focus on, is meeting a need here in our community. When we were in Guatemala, we both kind of led the trip along with World Help, and I got and the other partners that we had, the other churches that were with us, Kurt and Seth and their churches from their areas in Bastion, Virginia, Burlington, North Carolina. We had an incredible time with that group. I think we all saw some of the same things and we all had a heart for what was going on there, but a heart for our community. And one of the things that strikes me is when we were distributing the food, just that, for instance, we gave enough food for them to be taken care of, a family, for a week or maybe 2 weeks, and in some instances, depending on the size of the family, and they literally carried it away in one bag. And it's kind of amazing to stop and think about the different consumption levels that we have, or just different dietary needs, from that standpoint. And they didn't have a hope of walking to a grocery store and picking something up, because it really doesn't exist in some of the areas that we were in. And then when we were leaving that Saturday morning to return back to America, we were all asked, have you been in certain parts of the world within the last 15 days? And the answer was no. We had been there during that time. But an interesting thing was when we get back home, it starts to unfold, and then it starts to unfold even more. And now we're seeing some incredible needs right here in our community through the need of food, because we have people that are dealing with not being able to get needed resources because people were buying so much to prepare for things. But we're dealing with situations where people are anticipating some unemployment. People are already experiencing maybe a drop in wage, or maybe there's that fear. We've got obviously people in the service sector of our economy and community, whether it's a waiter, a waitress, people that were working retail, and some of those hours have dropped drastically. People that are just in different settings. That's going to create more of a need for us to be on mission in the area of helping with food. So one of the things that we have done, and we're going to continue to do, is to help resource some of our local food pantries. Cleaning products that they're going to need, personal hygiene items they're going to need, definitely non-perishable food items and different things. And we're working to better ourselves to help equip and resource some of these organizations and what's going on. We want to get better at that, and we're working on that this week to be able to do that. But just thinking through some of these things, obviously we can all spare some canned goods if we have them to meet a need. What are some other things that we can do, whether it is food, hygiene items, or just the fact that right now people seem to be open to the concept of hope, and you and I both know that hope has a name, and that name is Jesus. So what are some things we can do to be on mission right now here in our community?
Sure, I think that right now what we're seeing with the lack of food, with even the extended time at home, I mean, moms are now stay-at-home moms that used to be in the workforce, and then really they're trying to juggle those because they're staying at home and working at the same time as having their kids. So you're seeing a lot of stress on a lot of different things, not just the pantry, but also on the home as a whole. And so I think something that we can do food-wise is certainly if you've got neighbors that are elderly, or you've got neighbors that just recently lost a job, or this has forced them to stay home, I would check on them and see if there is something that you can help out with. Obviously, we're not miracle workers, so if there's some sort of food that they can't get that nobody else can, maybe you can't get it. But asking people what they need and being a blessing, and that way just to provide for their need, just like we did in Guatemala, is an awesome thing. But I also think that with the stress of staying at home all the time also comes the mental strains, the emotional strains, because people that, even though we love them, they're our family, that we were not in the house for 8 hours, really 24 hours together before. Now we're in the home for 24 hours together, and there's questions and bickering and those things. I think something that we can do to encourage those around us is even just send an encouraging text or a note. The last time I checked, the postal service was still open, so sending a card and just saying,
a handwritten card.
A handwritten card, yeah. And
that's
saying,
different and needed.
Sure, and saying that we care about you, we love you, we're praying for you. And one of my pet peeves, I know everybody's is when someone says they're praying for you, but they say that as an excuse to stop talking to you, you know what I mean? There's this like, oh yeah, we'll be praying about that, and they turn and skitter off. So if you're gonna write that, please pray for that person. But I think that all of those things together, it's not just the food. And for a lot of people, I mean, there's not necessarily a way to fix the financial situation, but that's causing a lot of stress, and it goes back to the home. And you and I talked about this beforehand, and you'll speak more to this, but the idea that our first mission is our home. And if all of this is causing stress there, that has to be the area that we protect the most, that we fortify the most around, and then allow the other things to kind of flow through that. But if our home is defenseless, then the other things that we can't put a defense around because this is going to get attacked. So I know you'll speak to that, but how do they, as a family that's now 24 hours at home together, how do you protect, or how do you use that time? Everybody says use that time to grow closer and to follow the Lord together, and then you've got a kid who's just saying, my iPad won't work. How do you marry those two and say, hey, little Jimmy, here's what we're doing, and here's how we do that?
Well, I think you say, hey, little Jimmy, just be thankful you got the iPad that doesn't work, right? I mean, I think maybe we've all been there, especially during this time, stress level a little bit high. I think one of the things that we have to do during this time is just like we went to Guatemala and we had a mission and we had a purpose. The other week, we went and helped out at the Mary Lee Meyer food pantry and distributed personal hygiene items and cleaning items that our church community kind of donated, and then the children at the Harmony Learning Academy put together and bagged up. We went and did that. There was a purpose to that. So I think during this crisis, one of the things that we can do is to say, okay, we're at home more. What is our purpose? And I think it goes back to being intentional during that time, because we get busy. We go through life. We have our schedules. For me, the schedule has been disrupted for a little bit because of e-learning and taking care of some different things. And I know that other people are experiencing the same thing. And I caught myself the other day going, look, life is different. What haven't I done lately that I did do? And did I even need to do that previously? What am I doing with that time now? But I think just honestly taking and some time to be intentional, and to be intentional with our family. Our number one mission field is our family, right? What good does it do us to go to Guatemala to support missionaries, to try and reach the other side of our community or the other side of the globe if we're not doing something right in our home? So I think we start being intentional at home, and one of the things that I think we can do during this time, we talked about praying. I think that maybe it would be a good thing just to implement during this time, since we have some extra time, is to pray with and for our family. And I say with, because if you have children, children learn to pray a lot of times by hearing mom and dad pray, okay?
Yes.
And I know that sometimes people are uncomfortable praying out loud in front of anyone because they're afraid they're going to get it wrong. But I'm going to tell you something. When Jesus talked about having faith like a child, he was talking about the simplicity of their faith. And one of the things that I love to hear is I love to hear my children pray because it's coming from a heart of concern. And while I often might smile on the inside, it's not making fun of it. It's realizing what's important in their life and what's going on in their world. And it brings some of that out. And I think it does us good to hear our children. And I think it does our children good to hear us. So maybe one of the things to do right now is to just make a list of some people and some things that you can pray for, and do that with your children. Yesterday in our message, we gave 4 questions at the end, and it was just questions, why is the relationship with Jesus so important? Why do we need to rely on the Bible? Why do we need to pray? What can we ask God for as a family? And then who could benefit from our faith? Just taking some time to discuss some of those things might be helpful. This is something I'm going to let you speak to. You're a little bit younger than I am. Your children are at a kind of a same age as some of ours are. But one of the things that I notice and that I hear regularly is when I was growing up, and I know when you were growing up in your household, you sat down and you ate at the dinner table together. We weren't competing with a cell phone. There wasn't the competition of the iPad or the computer. or even the television, because quite frankly, when I was growing up, there wasn't enough people on our street for us to have cable.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't have cable, and you had the choice of three, and usually dinner time was the news.
Yeah.
So I wasn't necessarily interested in watching the weather or the news at that point in time in that day and age, because it was just completely different. What are some things that we could do to be intentional during dinner time? And maybe even eating together as a family during that time?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things you can do. Obviously, I would say first off, I've tried to practice this with my family. Obviously, most times it is my wife that is making dinner. So I try and either model it or have our kids always start off with an attitude of gratitude and say thank you to mom for making dinner. Now, it may be that Grubhub made your dinner, right? It may be that somebody delivered your food. Pizza Hut is the queen of that night. But either way, starting off with an attitude of gratitude of we have this because God has provided for us. And starting that conversation in a spiritual sense. Now, I'm not trying to say spiritualize everything, right? Like this piece of pepperoni is round, like the earth that God created, or anything like that. I just ticked off the flat earthers. But if you are looking at that and trying to
they need to be ticked off anyway.
True.
I mean, really.
That's true. But if they're trying to make all of those things spiritual, I'm not saying to do that. I just mean that if you start off with this idea of gratitude, that we are thankful for what God has given to us, the rest of the conversation that you can go through changes. Because if you start off and mom and dad are bickering and fighting, and I've caught myself even saying things about, like, I would never bicker with my wife. But I've caught myself being just like, I can't believe this is, the news is saying this, or that this person posted this on Chatter or whatever. And if your kids are hearing that, then even the questions that I would encourage you to ask are going to be changed in how they answer, because the attitude is not gratitude in the beginning. It's very much just venting, or it's very much being complaining. So I would say even just asking your kids, what's something that you learned today? I know they're not in school. Some of them have gone to e-learning today until Schoology crashed. But maybe asking them, what is something that you have learned today that you did not know before? It may be something about your siblings. It might be something about your parents. It might be something about the church. It might be something that you watched on YouTube if you let them watch something. I don't know. But asking that question will start that process of them interacting with you and making it intentional. But then I think you can actually continue on past that. And for me, this is an uncomfortable thing to talk about as a family, especially maybe even around a dinner table, but asking something about what's something you failed at today. So maybe for you, those who have boys like mine who's 9 and just loves to play Fortnite, all right? He's gonna fail multiple times at Fortnite because it's built for different people winning, right? So asking those questions and then allowing it to be okay that they failed, and then encouraging them afterwards. Now, I know Fortnite in our minds is like, oh my gosh, it's Fortnite, just get over it, you can just start another round. But in their minds, especially when that's what all of their friends are playing, and their friends, like my son's friends are getting victory royales, and he's going, but I haven't gotten one. That's a very defeating thing that they've failed at in their mind. And for us, we can throw it off and be like, it's no big deal. But it is a big deal to them. So allowing them to open up and say, this is an area that I failed at. It may even be obedience. I didn't listen to mom today, or I didn't do this, or I yelled at my sister, or I got angry, whatever. Giving them the opportunity to address that, and then lovingly talking through it with them, that's okay. Jesus died for our failures, and honestly, failures are how we learn in the future with some of those things. So I think just asking questions is the best way to be intentional. Now, don't go into it not knowing what questions you're going to ask, because you'll end up being like, so you guys like SpongeBob? You'll end up with these questions that you're like, where did I even pull that from? Because you didn't think through it. So for your family to be intentional around the dinner table, you have to be intentional prior to. You have to think through some things as you come to the dinner table to say, this is what we are going to talk about. And I know some of you only have 15, 20, 25 minutes because kids are used to eating fast because of school. So you might only have a little bit of time with them, especially before they're asking for something else that makes you have to not finish your dinner and get up and get them. But the overall time that you have, make it intentional and focus it on your family, just that you love them and that you want to know what's new with them. A lot of times as adults, we tend to have our phones at dinner, and I'm a culprit. And we're checking our emails, or we're looking at what's going on, or we posted something, we're seeing the traffic it's getting and things like that. And our kids are just eating and they're trying to talk to us. And we're going, hold on in just a minute. and we're on our phones. Well, to a kid, you're obviously intentional about something, and it's not them. So even just things like that, put away your cell phones at dinner and just talk with them. Just little things about being intentional.
Absolutely. And everything you mentioned was going back to things that are important to them. You know, it's important that your children know that they can fail and they'll live to see another day, okay? And obviously we want to guide them and direct them. Our tendency is to try and protect them from every potential failure and all of those kind of things, and we can't. We live in a world that puts a lot of pressure to succeed on children. Part of the reason that we do that is we tend to parent and lead from reputation rather than relationship.
Yeah.
And our kids feel that by the choices that we make. That's something that I have had to really work on and be intentional about, just because of the way society is. So I would speak to that and say I think that's an incredible thing. That's a very good thing. And one of the things that matters is if Fortnite is important to Titus, okay, you taking an interest in that is vital as well. You know, I went to a lot of things growing up that I did that my parents took me to, and I know that there was a lot of times they may not have been that interested in it, but I learned and I observed that because it was important to me, okay, and it wasn't anything that was bad or wrong, it was important to them. So they were intentional about that, and I'm thankful that I can look back and see that, and there's many times in life that it's just as simple as that. When we're sitting around the dinner table right now, I think laying some of the technology down and being intentional is definitely needed. It's a good place to start. I know that maybe we feel like we have a lot of time on our hands right now because not only is school out, some are still enjoying spring break, some went back to that, you know, Schoology crash today with e-learning, or maybe there's another provider and you're experiencing the same thing, because I'm certain that nobody intended for millions and millions of students all across the country to be on that at once. It didn't anticipate that, so you certainly understand some things. I think maybe when we are looking at those two things, maybe we remember that sports are out, right? That they're not doing those kind of things, and people are not running out to the restaurant, they're not running out to the store, so we have a lot more time together. I think that just letting us have some time together is a very healthy thing, because most people, whether they realize it or not, there's a lot of families out there that have the frantic family syndrome, okay? And that's just a fancy term meaning that you are constantly on the go and you never have downtime together. And our families are kind of on overdrive. And I would encourage you right now just to think of maybe some different things. Maybe this sounds cheesy to you, and some of you may love it, but maybe you have a theme night where this is just what you're focusing on, not just at dinner, but maybe throughout the day or that evening. This is what we're going to do. You know, you have a family game night, or you're going to have movie night. That's something that you really can be intentional about. I saw last week one of our families said they were doing a date night, and they stayed in and they arranged it, and mom and dad had time together. So taking moments, and you certainly don't ignore time together as a husband and wife. Now take advantage of that, be intentional with that, but I would encourage you to be intentional as we talked about with your family. One of the things that we tend to do is just go from thing to thing and place to place. Now we have the opportunity to rewrite our schedules. And here's what I want to encourage you to do today, and I'm going to let AJ speak to it a little bit. And a lot of this is just conversational with us right now, and it's just kind of unfolding, is we have the opportunity to rewrite our schedules. I want to encourage you to use this opportunity, this crisis, okay? I want to encourage you to use this as an opportunity to take control of your schedule and control of your life. Because this is the perfect opportunity to say, you know what? We really didn't need to have this in our life. We're not missing it. We're surviving. We're just going to kind of take an eraser, and when life goes back to normal, we're not bringing this back. What are some things that families might consider around that are simple things that we're learning, hey, we can live without?
Oh man, there's so much to talk. Even just thinking through with our own family, we limit the amount of. I know some of you might hate me, but we limit the amount of sports our kids can play because I don't want it to dictate our family's schedule as far as we're always on a kid's activity. I think that that's important. I think that if mom and dad are both taking kids to other sports and they're never spending time together and nobody sees each other till 9 o'clock at night when it's bedtime anyways, some of those things, though they're not bad, sports are not bad, or dance or whatever is not bad, some of those things can really cause some family issues, and parents go, I don't even know my kid anymore. And you're like, well, yeah.
Yeah, and mom and dad don't even know each other.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
And the kids that are split up don't even know each other because one is at one location and another is at another location.
Yeah. So I think it is one of those, you need to be intentional. If you're in that setting, something needs to go to allow you to have the intentional time together. Now, I'm not saying you need to go to Little House on the Prairie and everybody's out milking cows every night, but like giving some set time of this is when we are going to do that and being intentional about that. So to me, that would be the way I would speak to that is just look and say, what is it that we can give up? And then also, if we're going to give that up, it's just like a diet, right? If you're going to give up something bad, you've got to be intentional about replacing it with something good. So not only am I going to get rid of this, now I'm going to add this. I would encourage, I thought about this as we were just talking right before we started the live video, that my girls love to draw on the sidewalks with chalk, and you've seen it on Chatter. Everybody's writing encouraging messages. But even writing on the sidewalk, more people are taking walks, and I would encourage you to, and then do a prayer walk. We talked about that. As you walk by people's houses, pray for them, that God would protect them, that God would bless them, that God would give you an opportunity to give them the gospel. But then with the sidewalk chalk, even allowing and writing a message saying, write down a prayer request. They don't have to put their name. But then you could have a driveway that's full of prayer requests if people wanted to do that, their safety, health, whatever. And you start off by writing some of yours so they don't feel awkward being the first one.
Yeah, being the first one.
But start off and just write that and then spend some time praying for it. As a family, go out there and say, hey, this is our driveway. These are our requests that people have laid for us to give. And being intentional in that way, but you're going to have to give up something. If you're going to continue that, you're going to have to give up something for that to happen because most of us don't see our homes until late at night when we're working in sports and all those different things. So you've just got to be intentional. And honestly, I've never had a time where I've prayed and asked God to show me something that I need to get rid of that he's been like, you're good. Anytime it's like I'll pray, and the moment I start praying, it pops in my head and I'll be like, maybe I need to pray a little harder because I don't want to get rid of that. Like maybe it's something deeper that God wants me. He's like, nope, I give it to you, get rid of that. So I would say if you spend time saying, God, what is it that we as a family can do to be more intentional? God's not going to go, I don't know. He's going to say, here you go. Now, you may not like it, but he's going to say, here you go, do this.
And I think this is an incredible opportunity for us to really take control of our schedules. It's been a huge blessing to me. I've spent more time with my girls and my wife during this time than I have in a long time, just because some of the normal things that usually take place are not taking place. And I could have filled that up with other things. I could have said, look, I've got to get this, I've got to figure it out. But I was really encouraged by some others to say, look, take this time and let it be with your family. Don't fill it with something else. Be intentional with that. And that's what I'm doing. And I want to encourage you to do the same as much as you possibly can and begin to think about some of those things that you can just kind of remove from your schedule. Maybe some things that really wear you out and you don't realize it. They're coming to mind right now. Maybe some things that you're learning we can live without, and use that time to pour back into your children, to pray with them, to go out and do a prayer walk in your neighborhood. That's a family on mission. Just being able to pray with them as you're walking through the neighborhood and ask God to bless those homes. Maybe it's taking food to that neighbor, as AJ mentioned earlier. Maybe it's just getting in contact with your church, your church community, maybe the town, the community that you live in, and letting some of those leaders know, is there anything that I can do? And if there is something I can do, let me know what it is that I could serve some of the families in the area and go out and do that. that. If elderly need some groceries picked up or a prescription dropped by, that's an opportunity to do that. Take one of the children along, or make it a family outing to where you go and do that and meet a need in their life. And we're not telling you to go out and run around and disobey some of the things that are intact, but they're making an allowance for that when you're out doing something like that. So I would encourage you to do that as a family, and let your family serve together, because you may not be able to go to your local church right now and serve in that building, but guess what? People are realizing all across our country that the church is not a building, okay? We are a body, and that's one of the things that I love about this time is that we are a body and we're still able to function even outside of a building, and we need to know that. It forces us to be creative. It forces us to look at things in a different way and to be able to go and do. And that's one of the things I loved about being out on the mission trip and seeing that is that there weren't fancy buildings. There wasn't air conditioned. There wasn't a way to get together. And guess what? They don't have the technology in place to do what we're doing right now. So this is an incredible opportunity for us to be on mission in many ways, and I want to encourage you and your family to be thinking about how you can make this time a mission and be intentional to share the hope and love of Jesus, not only with each other, but with the people around you. Anything you want to speak to?
Yeah, I would say something that I want you to think about is that on our Facebook page, we will put out for kids a couple of videos each week that will be a help for your kids. We know that, I gotta be honest with you guys, like I'm not following the American Pediatric Association's screen time recommendation during the during this whole ordeal. Okay, so we are.
Oh my word! I can't believe I'm doing this with you. I'm gonna have to get a different guest next time.
So we, it's one of those things that we have just. We've tried to put together playlists of things. It's got worship videos, it's got goofy videos and things like that, and then it's got lessons in it, just to try and help you as a family grow closer together. The idea is not you put the YouTube playlist on and walk away. That's not the idea. The idea is you put the YouTube playlist on and you spend time. Listen, I recorded the YouTube playlist this last Sunday, and my kids and I sat down and watched it, and I hate watching myself on any screen. But
I have a hard time believing that you hate listening to yourself or watching yourself.
You sit back and you're like, why did
I can just see that now. Brett, wasn't that awesome? You liked that, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm used to hearing no from her, so that's fine.
Titus and you were high-fiving.
So I would say sit down with your family, watch it, and just discuss. There's questions in there for you as a family. There's things you can do together. This last time, the Gospel Project and Lifeway Christian Resources were kind enough to allow us to use what we would normally do on a Sunday morning on that. And so on Sundays, we'll put a video out that has all of those things, just so that your kids can still be involved and enjoy that time together. And when we come back, we won't feel like, all right, now remember what we learned like 8 weeks ago, we're gonna move on to the next one. You know, we can still continue that. So keep an eye out for things like that. Use it to the best of your ability. I know some of you feel like I'm not, I don't have technology in my blood. I don't know how to do it. But we try and make it relatively easy. As long as you like our Harmony of Avon Facebook page, you're going to see it, because that's where we're posting all of the information, and then you just click on links off of that and be able to get to where you need to go. So I would encourage you, keep an eye out for that. We're just trying to make it as easy as possible for during this time for you to be intentional, spending time with your family and growing together as a family, spiritually, but also just emotionally growing together.
Absolutely, and we're also implementing some things that will be sustainable as we go through the months ahead, so that we can better serve you and meet needs in your life and in the life of your family. Be looking for some more resources this week. We've got some ideas that we're talking through as to how to make this a time for you to take your next steps, right? We talked a lot about next steps up to this point in this year, and we're still needing to take next steps. We all have an opportunity to grow. We all have an opportunity to be able to show some improvement in every area of our life, whether it's a Bible reading plan, whether it's a prayer plan, whether it's witnessing, whether it's taking that step to get involved in serving in some capacity. Right now is an awesome time to be thinking about that next step and just take it. Start a Bible reading plan. Begin to pray. Serve by doing something nice for your neighbor, right? You don't have to come to a building and doing it and do it here. You can go and do that. Just think of some of the things that you're doing around your home as an act of service for your children, for your spouse, or for whoever may be there. Get connected. I love to see people on Facebook making the masks and doing some different things like that. They're posting the pictures. That's incredible. Helping people on the front line. There's all kinds of ways we can do this and just continue to take next steps. So be looking for some more things coming out on the website and on social media as to what's ahead in the next several weeks as we're leading into what has been put in place leading up to April the 30th. We've got a lot more time that we're going to spend together. We're going to be doing more of these conversational moments to help you and just taking some time. All of them won't be this long. Some of them might be twice as long, right? Some of them might be a whole lot shorter. But anyway, we're going to continue to work through these things so that we can get better at serving you, so that we can get better at serving the kingdom and making a difference. Thanks for being with us today at Harmony at Home, and you have a great day.